All right, so let's keep going. We've talked about the sales budget, and we said it was always prepared first. The production budget is always produced second. And when we talk about the production budget, we are not talking about dollars, we're talking about total units to be produced. However, those units that are being produced do have a cost, and as you probably know, those costs are divided into direct materials, direct labor, and all of our factory overhead costs. So we're going to talk about the direct materials purchases budget next. So we are going to get into how many units of direct materials we need to purchase, but unlike total production of finished goods, here we are going to discuss both quantity or inventory levels for direct materials, but also what the actual cost is of these direct materials that are going to ultimately flow into cost of goods sold, well, first into work in process, and then into cost of goods sold when we sell the merchandise. So we have the exact same example as before. It's the same company. It's this Elite Accessories, and we're selling wallets and handbags. So there's a few things we have to do. We have to look at what the materials components are for the wallet. Looks like 3/10 or 30% of a square yard per wallet. Lining is 0.1 square yard per unit. For the handbags, these are bigger. So 1.25 square yards of leather per unit and a half of 1 unit square yard per unit for the lining. Okay? So these are what our inputs are going to be for each unit. We have 2 raw materials or 2 direct materials that go into the production of the wallets and handbags. We also have to do the same thing that we did with the production budget, but we have to break it down into each type of direct material. So we have just these 2. We have leather and lining, and we have to look at what our beginning inventory is for each of these items, but also what we desire to have at the end of the year. And it looks like, for example, with leather, we want to grow our inventory a little bit at the end of the year, but with lining, we're willing to let that drop off a little bit from 15,000 to 12,000 units. And then finally, we have to know what our price is per square yard of this material. Looks like leather is $4.50 per square yard. Lining is $1.20 per square yard. Okay, so a lot of information here. We have our purchases budget for direct materials. So we're going to do the exact same thing based on our production, our total production that we've already calculated, and based on our the amount of material required for each unit of production and our desired ending inventory, we're going to come up with some total square yards, and then we're going to multiply that by the unit price per square yard, and we're going to come up with total cost. So no surprise here, the handbags are much larger, so we're going to need 365,000 square yards for our production for the handbags and leather, 156,000 for wallets, plus we also have a desired ending inventory of 20,000 square yards of leather for the end of the year, and we're going to add those together. We're going to do the exact same thing for our lining, and we're going to come up with 541,000 total square yards for leather, 210 for lining. But wait, we also have to subtract out our estimated beginning inventory of 18,000 square yards of leather and 15,000 square yards of lining. Gives us a net 523,000 square yards that we're going to have to purchase for leather, 195,000 square yards to be purchased for lining. We simply then multiply that by our unit price per square yard that we've already looked at, $4.50 and $1.20. We come up with $2.35 million for leather budgeted and $234,000 for the lining. Our total for both of these direct materials is $2,587,500. And that is our direct materials purchases budget for this company that makes 2 products. Each product has 2 direct materials. All right, so the next component of product cost is direct labor, and we have a budget for that as well. So when we think about our direct labor cost budget, we have to break this down a little bit as well, although it is not nearly as complicated as direct materials. It says we're going to use 2 steps, and they are as follows. The first step, we have to determine the budgeted direct labor hours required for production, and the way we do that is we say, okay, how many units of production are we going to have? We've already calculated that back in the production budget, but we also have to calculate, okay, that's fine, but how long does it take to make 1 unit of production? So that will give us our direct labor, our total direct labor hours. However, we also have to account for how much our workers are making. So when we look at the direct labor cost budget right here, we have our direct labor required for production in hours. It should say in hours here from step 1 times the hourly rate. So let's see if we have an example. Well, not yet, because looks like we have a couple of things going on here too. So maybe not as simple as we had hoped. Looks like we have 2 departments, a cutting department and a sewing department, and we have those for both the wallet and the handbag. Looks like it's going to take us 0.1 hours per unit per wallet, so 6 minutes. Sewing department, 0.25 hours, so it takes 15 minutes to sew one of these wallets. Handbags take even more time. We also have to account for the fact, looks like, our average hourly rate for cutting is $12 and our sewing department hourly rate is $15. So this is actually starting to get a little bit complicated. All right. So notice we're no longer talking about units. We're talking about hours required for production. This is the direct labor cost budget. So when we look at the total hours required, even though the handbag takes more time, we're making a lot fewer of those. So we have 52,000 hours for the wallet in the cutting department and 43,800 for the handbag. We merely add these 2 numbers together to give us our total cutting hours of 95,800 multiplied by the hourly rate of $12 for the cutting department. It gives us 1.15 million total cost, estimated cost. Sewing takes longer, 130,000 hours for the wallet and a little under 117,000 for the handbag. Total 246,800 in hours multiplied by the $15 hourly rate gives us 3.7 million. We add those 2 figures together and we say, okay, our direct labor budgeted cost is $4,851,600. And those are all the components for that. All right, let's go ahead and stop here, and then we'll pick up factory overhead in the next video.